What does Pro Football Focus think of the Seattle Seahawks on offense? All right, everybody. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Hope things are going well for you all today. And we've got some more Pro Football Focus stuff I want to take a look at today because yesterday, Pro Football Focus finally came out with an article that I was waiting for them to drop so that I can make this video, because I didn't want to do one video for just one of these articles. I wanted to let a few get out there that could be grouped together in a way that made sense, because I don't think there's enough to talk about with just one of these articles. But if you put everything that PFF has done in this category together, and this is like the last, I want to say month, maybe month and a half, you can get an idea of what PFF is saying about the Seahawks on offense. So what they have done here, because remember, I made a video a few weeks ago talking about some articles that PFF did ranking the top 30 players at each position. Well, now they've gone and ranked every team by positional group, which is probably more useful, because ultimately we're not rooting for certain players on the Seahawks. We're rooting for the team, the Seahawks, right? So you can have the greatest receiver in the world. You can have the greatest wide receiver in football, but if you don't have anything else and your receiver group still averages out to be not very good, it's only going to get you so far. So I want to take a look at this, see what they think, and compare it to what we think, or at least what I think. And let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. But PFF, they do good work. They try. They put a lot of effort into what they do here. And I think it's worth hearing out, even if I'm not always going to agree with it, even if sometimes I'm going to be like, well, that can't possibly be right. So good to look at. So that's what we're doing today. Please click the thumbs up button on this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to support the channel. So what they have done is they have ranked every running back unit in the league first. That's this first article here. And basically it is the whole depth chart of the running back room, right? Number one is, of course, the Ravens. Now, understand that for the most part, the influencing factor is still the starting running back, and certainly that weighs a lot heavier than like the third or fourth stringer. That's just common sense. That's just, well, the starter is going to be the guy who plays the most, so why pretend otherwise? So we got the Ravens because of Derrick Henry mostly, although they do point out, hey, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, Rasheen Ali, they've got other things going on there that are good. Lions, Falcons, Eagles, and the Seattle Seahawks creep into that number 5 spot. So the Seattle Seahawks, according to PFF, have the 5th best running back room in the league. K9, Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, Damian Martinez. This is why I like PFF. They're aware of somebody like a Kenny McIntosh. They're aware of somebody like a Damian Martinez. And they'll take into factor those things. A lot of people won't, because they don't really know those players. And that's understandable. They haven't really done anything in the NFL yet. But they are on the team, and they do have a role to play. And how good they are does affect things. And clearly, PFF is realizing that here. Like if you look at number 4, the Eagles, you've got Saquon Barkley, who is obviously Saquon Barkley, but his backups are A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley. A.J. Dillon did not play football last year. Will Shipley had 34 carries last season. So there's not really a lot going on behind Saquon. And there are some people out there who would say, well, that doesn't really matter that much. But PFF says, no, it does. It weighs into the equation. So number 5. And that's a pretty strong ranking. That's something we as fans can feel pretty good about. And I think it's good. You can see that PFF is a big fan of K9. They think he's one of the best running backs in the league. And I know that not every Seahawks fan feels that way. But you can understand why PFF would come to this conclusion. And they're also fans of Charbonnet, which I think is also pretty reasonable. I don't know if we're actually fifth, but I think we're probably around fifth. So I'm liking this. But this is kind of where the good news stops. I'm just going to say it right now. So this was the running backs. Let's go to wide receiver. This is an article that was posted a few weeks ago. I know that. But first time that I'm talking about it here on YouTube. And again, I wanted to wait for the article that came out yesterday before I actually talked about this. So wide receiver, Eagles, Bucks, Bengals, Lions, Niners, Vikings, Dolphins, Rams, Bears, Okay. So the Seattle Seahawks in previous years have ranked very high in wide receiver rankings. This year they do not. No DK Metcalf, no Tyler Lockett, and I mean, this is what happens. So JSN, obviously they like JSN. I think, and I'll say this, I don't think PFF understands how good JSN is quite yet. They might need to see it for one more season, which that's fine. But they did not put JSN in the top 20 receivers. I think that JSN is probably a top 20 receiver. I don't know if he's top 15, but I do think he's top 20. Cooper Kupp. Now, I think that there's so much variance with the way Cooper Kupp could end up playing that not giving him a ton of credit for his, excuse me, not giving him a ton of credit as part of this core is reasonable. And then you have MVS, who looked great in Clint Kubiak's system last season, and it's a decent group for Sam Darnold to throw to. Now, one thing that's worth noting, and one thing I don't like about this article, is that it's also including K9, and if we had a more notable tight end, that would also be included. So this is receiving corp, not just wide receiver corp. I would prefer they just talk about receivers, but I don't think that would change anything that much. Ken Walker is a decent receiving back, but he hasn't been extraordinary so far. Charbonnet's good, but again, he's not Austin Eckler or anything like that. And obviously our tight ends are not anything to get super excited about. So PFF lands below average. They say slightly below average. Again, they don't mention the tight end situation in this write-up at all because there's not much to say, and they would if they thought there was something to say. Like, you scroll down one, Green Bay, they're talking about Tucker Kraft. So that's what happens when you move off of two of the better players in franchise history. Now, obviously, I support them moving off Lockett, and I'm okay with them moving off DK. I don't know if I would have bitten on that particular trade, which was pretty bad, but I don't think it's a bad idea to downgrade at the receiver position, especially with the money being what it is. But there is a price to pay for that. There is a cost to that, and you see it here. We went from having one of the best receivers receiving setups in the NFL to this, below average. And we'll see how much it ends up hurting the team, but there will be some ramifications for it. So that's the receivers, 20th in the league, below average. And then yesterday we got this article, the offensive line. The offensive line rankings, which, remember, PFF did do an article where they ranked offensive linemen individually. This is probably more useful. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say that Pro Football Focus is not yet impressed. You have the usual suspects near the top, the Eagles, the Broncos, the Bills, got the Bears and Colts up here now. And we're just going to keep on going and going and going and going and going. And yeah, number 30, bottom three, down there with the Bengals, down there with the Texans, down there with the Patriots, down there with the Giants. One of the worst, in the conversation for the worst. There's not much to suggest that the Seahawks won't again field a bottom tier offensive line. Seattle used its first round pick on Gray Zabel, projected to start at left guard. However, a rookie who played at the FCS level last season is unlikely to provide a significant upgrade to a unit that allowed the second highest pressure rate in 2024. And when you combine that with Sam Darnold being a quarterback that really likes to hold on to the ball, I think that not only will the offensive line probably be this bad, they will probably look about this bad. Maybe they'll end up looking worse than they actually are. So, wish I could disagree with this ranking, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think people should really latch onto here, because I'll give a little bit here. I'll give a little bit here. This doesn't seem to take into account the Abe Lucas factor, which I think is a mistake. I think that factoring in Abe Lucas finally being healthy, the offensive line should be better than it was the last couple years just because of that. I don't know if it's going to be 27th or 28th. I don't think they're going to be 30th. I could see them just being a couple notches to where who cares. I don't think that it's wise to ignore the impact of Abe Lucas, but what they say about Gray Zabel is very fair, and I think that these fans, Seahawks fans, need to mentally prepare themselves for this being a realistic possibility. I said previously that I don't think Gray Zabel is going to be a very big upgrade from what we got from Laken Tomlinson last year, and this is kind of the thing that I'm talking about here. A rookie who played at the FCS level last season. And by the way, he's going to be technically changing position, right? There's going to be some learning curve there as well. So if you're anybody out there who's expecting Gray Zabel to just get out there and start running people over and completely turning this offensive line around, get that out of your head. So do I think that Gray Zabel will be better than Laken Tomlinson was last year? Yeah, it's a pretty low bar to clear. Do I think he's going to be a lot better? Probably not, because that's not how football works. That's just not a reasonable expectation. So, I keep saying the word so. I say that word way too much in my videos. Sorry, guys. Anyway, then you've got Oluwatimi, and we know that PFF thinks very poorly of Oluwatimi. They had him basically ranked as the worst center in football. And I don't know what they think of our right guards, but obviously they don't think much of it. Looking at something like this, it's kind of a reality check. I don't think this is entirely accurate. I don't. And I also want to say this. You can win without having a very good offensive line. The Bengals almost made the playoffs last year, probably should have. And they've got this bottom-ranked offensive line. It's the same basic offensive line as last year. I mean, they don't think it got any better anyway. Houston had a terrible offensive line last year, made the playoffs, right? You see what I'm getting at here? This is not to say that the Seahawks cannot be a good team with one of the worst offensive lines in football, but be prepared for one of the worst offensive lines in football, because this is why I wanted this team to pursue a veteran, somebody that could plug in and immediately play at a high level. We didn't do that. We signed Josh Jones, a backup journeyman, barely, and then we decided to bet it all on players in-house improving and a rookie. Now, I don't think we'll actually be this bad, but we're going to be bad. That is absolutely the right expectation to have. That is absolutely the right mentality to have, because if you expect more than that, you're going to probably end up disappointed. So, there it is again. Anyway, that is what PFF thinks, and this is, I think it's a little bit off, but it's way closer to being on point than I wish it was. And again, there were a couple opportunities they had to sign some good veterans. They didn't do it. This is the cost. And when you combine that with some other Pro Football Focus articles that I've talked about in the past, like they ranked all 32 starting quarterbacks, and they ranked Sam Darnold 26th. And now Aaron Rodgers is signed, by the way, so it's probably 27th. And you also look at the tight end rankings, and you see that they had Noah Fant, if you will remember, down here in the 25 spot. So one of the worst quarterbacks and not a top 20 tight end it doesn't paint a very good picture for the offense in terms of the personnel. Pro Football Focus, not a fan of that side of the ball for the Seahawks. Bottom line. And that adds up to a pretty big ask for Klint Kubiak. By the way, remember, Noah Fant, I don't think he's going to be on the team when the season starts. So you've got Arroyo and you've got Barner. And neither of those guys would likely even be in the top 30. So once that happens, top 32, excuse me. When that happens, it's going to be even worse. And I know this is just Pro Football Focus. They may or may not get it right. But it gives you a pretty good idea of what a relatively objective and high effort group of analysts think of the offensive personnel. Klint Kubiak, you're earning your money. You are earning your money. And if you can find a way to put together a good offense with this group of players, if they are ranked appropriately, then you should probably get a head coaching job very, very soon, because that would be a pretty remarkable job. All right, let me know what you guys think. Not really good news in this set of articles. Not really what you want to see. Now, granted, the team has to go out there and prove this one way or the other. They can prove this ranking wrong, and I think there's some room for that. Again, I think the offensive line will be a little bit better than this because of Abe Lucas, but I do think the concerns about the interior are fair. And I also don't think Darnold is this bad, but the fact that he could be ranked this low is indicative of how wide the variance is on the way he might play this season. All right. Let me know what you guys think. PFF is eventually going to do this same thing for the defense. When that happens, I'll talk about that. I think they still need to do cornerback and safety. I'll make a video when that happens. And that's it. See you guys later today or tomorrow. Go Hawks. More stuff coming soon. We're not that far away, people. We're not that far away. We have preseason games coming up in a little more than 3 weeks. Have a good day. Go Hawks.